So now that we've spent a little bit of time talking about the timer system, let us go ahead and create the timer class. And that's what we're going to do in this video.
Alright, well, going back to engine, we're going to add in our new item. This item will be the timer class. The first thing I'm going to do inside of timer is change out our using for system.txt and replace it with a using from Microsoft XNA framework. And I will also take off the .engine subnamespace. And now we're free to work on the timer class itself. The first thing we'll address is a few fields that we'll need. I'm going to begin with the static list of timers that will manage or will be used to manage all active timers.
And that's the key here. Once again, active timers.
It will be a static list of type timer called timers, and it will be immediately initialized here using a call to new list of type timer. Alright, a few more fields. The rest of these fields will be instance fields. We need an amount of time remaining and the overall interval that should be used for the timer. We're also going to declare our fire notify handler event. So beginning with time remaining, this will be a private double called time remaining. We'll also put in our field for interval. I'll save a little bit of time by simply using copy-paste to duplicate that line, and we'll call this field interval. And our final field is going to be the notify handler event. So this will be a public event of type notify handler, and we'll call this event fire. So this will be the event that anyone would need to subscribe to if they wish to be notified every time the fire interval is hit. Alright, we'll begin with the instance methods for the timer class, and these methods will be the start and stop methods. First one will be a public void method, the method start, and start is going to take in an interval. So when using this timer, you'll need to have the interval on hand when you kick the timer off. This is done because it actually saves a little bit of code, as now we don't have to worry about whether or not to expose interval as a property. We simply leave that closed down. So you're not allowed to query a timer to see what its interval was. Of course, it would be relatively trivial to add this functionality. It was just not needed in Spacefire, therefore I opted to make it simple and completely enclosed inside of timer. Alright, when we go to start a timer, we need to do things like add it to the timers list so that it can be updated later, and initialize the interval and time remaining fields. Before we do that though, I'm going to do a check and make sure that this timer does not already exist in the list of timers to be updated. Since the call to start is going to put it into the timer or the active timers list, we don't want to run into a scenario where we have the same timer in the list twice. So if we do that, then we'll actually be eating away at the time twice as fast, because it'll get 2 update calls per game tick instead of 1.
Exactly. So this is more or less just a safety net.
Exactly. So we'll tell our timers to remove and specify this instance as the item to remove. And because of the way remove works, it actually returns a true or false to indicate whether or not that item was removed, but that's the only thing it does to indicate. That means that it's completely safe to call remove if the timer was not in the list. It'll just return false, but we're not even looking for that. Again, this is just a safeguard to make sure that it is not in the list when we're starting. Once we have ensured that it's not already in the list, we'll tell our timers to we'll add this instance. Once we do that, we'll initialize our timing fields, beginning with interval. We'll set this .interval equal to the given interval parameter. And let's use assignment and not subtraction. And finally, we have the time remaining field, which we will also initialize to a value of interval. This ensures that...
There's a T.
I see, spelling. This ensures that one full interval must elapse before the timer fires. Otherwise, calling start on the timer would immediately cause the fire event to get triggered. And now we can move on to the remove method, or excuse me, the stop method. This will be public void stop, and its only job is to remove the timer from the list. So timers.remove this, thereby making it an inactive timer.
That's right. The only way timers can count is if they are inside that list, so that the update will cause each of them to decrement their time remaining.
Exactly, and it's also important to remember that stop doesn't remove the timer from the game. If this timer is still maintained as a field in some other class, we're always free to restart it at a later time without destroying and making a new one.
That's right.
We've just taken it out of the list so that it lays dormant until another call to start is made. Now we need to address the update method. Update is going to be a static method, and therefore it's going to make timer look like a utility system if you're looking at it from the outside. The upshot of this is, of course, that we can call it as a single call from our game's update instead of relying on each individual user of the timer class to update their specific timer. It makes the entire system feel more automatic in nature. So we'll have our public static void method for update, and inside of update we'll take in a game time parameter. Now inside of this method we need to loop through all timers and update them as necessary. So I'll start a for loop to run in reverse. So we'll go through all of timers.count, and since we're in the timer class I don't specifically need to reference that, so I'm actually going to pull this back to simply timers.count. And for each timer now, we want to go, and just to make addressing the timer a little bit easier, since we have to go through timer sub I, I'm actually going to store it in a local variable. So we'll make a timer variable equal to timers sub I. Though, of course, you don't absolutely have to do this. It just makes it a little bit easier to refer to, especially since I would like to now consider the timers one by one, and it simply makes the syntax easier to read. So, with this timer, let's tell it to eat away at the time remaining based on how much time has elapsed since update was last called. So we can look at the elapsed time by looking into gametime.elapsed gametime.total seconds. So we'll eat away that much time from time remaining. Then we'll do a check on time remaining. So if that timer.time remaining is less than or equal to a value of 0, then the timer has run out of time, and we need it to fire its event. So we'll make a call to timer.fire and invoke the event, and we'll also reset the time remaining value so that we can begin another time cycle until the next interval is hit. So we'll say our timer.time remaining is equal to timer.interval.
And again, all of this is taking place in a loop that is walking through every timer that is currently being stored in that static list of timers. So all active timers are being decremented and firing off as they run out of time, and then restarting.
The only thing left to do now is to make sure that this update method gets called from within the game itself. So let me actually jump over to the game class, jump down to update, and make sure that timer.update is called and given the current game time.
And that's it. That makes the entire timer system very simple. So now Logan can create timers all day long, and those timers, when activated, just take care of themselves. We no longer have to worry about what mechanism is going to cause them to update and count down. That's all done. It all just runs automatically. All you have to remember is that a timer needs to be started, and then he begins doing his thing.
So with that, I would like to build, make sure that there are no syntax errors. Everything is looking good, so I believe that will wrap up this video.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, everyone.